Yeah, I'm Hayden Rieveschl. I'm the founder and CEO of Ocusell. I've been an entrepreneur since I was 22. So I started in the energy sector with mineral and royalty funds. But it was actually interesting because running in parallel to that is sort of when I met you and when I started getting exposure into the space. And it was through that exposure and coming to the tail end of my run in the energy sector that I really came upon this problem and traveling to your events that you would put on, talking to brokers within the market. It was all about the fragmentation, right? And the inconsistency between market A, market B, and market C. And really what I wanted to do with Ocusell is make the inconsistency scalable. What I mean by that, making the inconsistency scalable, is that 80% of brokers are listing into multiple MLSs, right? So when you have MLSA, MLSB, and MLSC, let's say, that they're listing into frequently, weekly basis, each of those MLSs have a distinct schema and a distinct rule set. So what they're faced with prior to Ocusell is essentially having to do essentially all of this work around a listing within a silo. It's very specific to that MLS. What Ocusell is bringing to the table is a single point of entry so that they can seamlessly create listings that are distributed to multiple MLSs in a single moment. Okay, I think the first misconception about Ocusell is that we're just another ad edit, and that couldn't be further from the truth. Yes, we have ad edit capability, but it is the next generation of ad edit with the one-to-many functionality. But I think more so, we are a listing orchestration platform, because what we realized when we were piloting Ocusell, right, as a one-to-many solution in the Atlanta market where there's 80% overlap and brokers are constantly listing into multiple markets, is that there's also this entire process that happens prior to a listing ever going live on the MLS, right? And that's what we like to call sort of the listing IPO, is you are preparing that listing for market. So there's a lot of manual work, there are lots of handoffs, and essentially that comes down in technical terms to data sequencing. So seller signs a listing agreement. In a transaction management platform, that draft is populated with an Ocusell. Our AI is taking that draft, it's populating those fields up to about 80 to 90%. So by the time the agent or admin sees that listing for the first time, they're rounding third base, right? Is it a luxury property or is it not a luxury property? It's a luxury property, well, it's going to this marketing team. Oh, who do we also need to inform? Ancillary services, mortgage, title, insurance. We also need to inform accounting. So there are all these handoffs, all these various groups, right, that are either being notified or putting their hands on the listing, photography, prior to that listing going live, right? This is to ensure the best performance possible for that property. The second misconception, which I believe is largely quelled today, but it was certainly apparent in the beginning, was, well, aren't you guys just going to become an MLS or a national MLS? Absolutely not. Like, again, that couldn't be further from the truth. I understand, when we're starting this company, that folks had to ask that question, right? We're working directly with the MLS. I think they've been burned in the past, right? And always are, speculative, right? So it was really important for them to understand that we are aligning with their rule set and enforcing that rule set, right? And we have no interest in replacing them. This is an infrastructure layer that sits on top. I mean, the way in which we support MLSs is we accommodate entirely to their rule set, and we serve up proactive compliance, right? So when that brokerage, when those users, agents, admins, staff, right, are entering listings in our platform, we are surfacing the business rules. We are enforcing those rules to make sure that listing is 100% compliant before it hits the MLS. This also is really helpful for the broker in terms of fine avoidance and things of that nature. But what it also does for the MLS is that's a very manual process for them. A lot of listings that are in violation are crowdsourced, or there's a staff dedicated to compliance, or maybe there's a CEO or COO, who's also wearing a compliance hat. right? And actually has to manually find those listings, tag those violations, and surface them to the broker. That's a lot of time for an MLS that doesn't have the resources. So we eliminate that entirely. So the benefits to a broker, it's really based on 5 pillars. We're maximizing efficiency, we're maximizing revenue, recruiting, retention, lead generation, and obviously the real-time compliance component for fine avoidance. All of those things create not only massive efficiency gains, but the lead generation is wildly important for a brokerage, right? That's the difference between a listing that's sold day 1, day 2, day 3, the listing that doesn't sell, right? There are multiple value propositions for agents. I think number one is speed to market, just the sheer efficiency that they gain when they're leveraging Ocusell, right? So agents, when they first get their hands on the platform, are about 86% faster, right? So getting that listing to market 86% faster, that just gives them more time to do what they do best, which is sell. I think another major value proposition for agents is the proactive compliance. Remember, a lot of these agents are listing in multiple markets. So in their head, they have to be like, these are the rules for MLSA, these are the rules for MLSB. Rules change. They have to keep track of that kind of stuff. A listing that's in violation could possibly get them a fine, right? That's ultimately coming out of their pocket. We don't want that to happen, right? So we're serving up real-time compliance so they can avoid those violations entirely.